All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with the latest 49er video on Brandon Aiyuk. And if you're getting tired of the Aiyuk updates, you are not alone. But we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary, get some brisket chili, and tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. And this video is also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use the promo code Krug, and they will match you up to your first $100. All right. What is the latest on Brandon Aiyuk? You can add NFL insider Mike Garafolo as the latest to comment on the contract negotiations between the Niners and their star wide receiver, Brandon Aiyuk. Now, last season was clearly Aiyuk's best. He caught 75 balls, 1,342 yards is what he turned those 75 balls into in the regular season. He scored 7 touchdowns. In the playoffs, he made the biggest catch of the playoff season in that NFC Championship game when the Niners were down big. They needed a spark. Aiyuk gave it to him when he caught the deflection down the field against the Lions. So Mike Garafolo, appearing on the NFL Network's The Insiders Show, spoke on the contract situation surrounding Brandon Aiyuk and the Niners. Garafolo asked the question that many have been wondering: is Brandon Aiyuk going to be with the 49ers long term, or is he not going to be with the 49ers long term? I mean, that is really the question that he's asking. You know, it's like, is this guy going to be here long term with the 49ers, or is he not going to be here long term with the 49ers? And at this point, we really don't know. We're going to have to see this year play out. Now, Aiyuk has alluded to the fact that he thinks he's going to be with the Niners in some form in 2024. And he says if it's not the Niners, it could be the Commanders. If it's not the Commanders, it could be the Steelers. Here is the quote from Garafolo. He said, for Aiyuk and the 49ers, they had conversations recently. They are no closer to a deal, from my understanding, but they are also no closer to a trade request. That's never been something that he has explored in this case. Besides, he's got to get back to work sometime before training camp to see if they can get something done. So that's the latest. So we had Aiyuk on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and Fred Taylor and Channing Crowder. And he was saying this and that. And, his mom's a big Niner fan. And yet, he's saying all these things that I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I don't care about anybody else. It's all about me and my money and my contract. And I can do this and I can do more. And I'm underutilized. Wouldn't I be freaking awesome if I was with Jaden Daniels and all this kind of stuff that kind of rubs you wrong. But then he maintained, hey, you know what? I want to be a Niner. And then TMZ caught up with him in the airport, said, hey, do you want to be a 49er? Do you think you'll be a 49er? Yes, I do think I'll be a 49er. So we're doing that back and forth. But this is the first report since then. And, to say that they had that conversation recently and then we saw footage of Aiyuk coming to the facility, potentially talking to them. I think most of us thought, well, they had one last meeting and obviously it went well. And he doesn't want to be traded. And then there's footage of him driving into the facility, open the damn gate, whatever he said. So we had reason to believe, well, they met. It was probably a good meeting. There's probably, maybe he was coming in to sign a contract. I think that's what a lot of people speculated, that possibly he could be at the facility to sign his contract and get, in the fold contractually for the upcoming season. But according to Garafolo, even though the Niners and Aiyuk have had conversations recently, they are no closer than they were to a deal getting done. So it just kind of makes you wonder where this thing is going. There was definitely some optimism that the Niners and Aiyuk were getting closer. As we said last Monday, he met with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Then later in the week, he was back at Levi Stadium, and, we thought for sure they're meeting again. I speculated at the time. I thought, well, maybe they ironed out some contract details. He's there to sign his contract. But now Garafolo's comment that the two sides are no closer to a deal makes you wonder if this thing is a bigger concern than we think. Now, there's plenty of time to get a deal worked out. The Niners don't report to training camp. The veterans don't report till July the 23rd. The first practice will probably be July the 24th or the 25th. And hopefully, once camp begins, the Niners and Aiyuk agree on a brand new deal, and he's in the fold, and it's all hunky dory. Aiyuk loves them, they love him, and it's all gets said and it all gets done and finalized. But the fact that he was talking about other teams, and then met with Shanahan and Lynch, and then came back for another meeting, and still now Garafolo saying they're no closer to a deal, makes you wonder. Makes you wonder, what's Aiyuk? Is Aiyuk's play going to be the holdout? And then if he holds out, how long do the Niners have patience for that? He's got a contract. He can play at $14.1 million. And if you're the 49ers, based on what I've seen from the training of Deebo Samuel, maybe it's better. Maybe it's better to let those guys compete for it this year. Deebo looks like he's motivated and fired up, and he's running on a treadmill, and he's running faster than ever and looking better. And, maybe it's not a foregone conclusion that he's entering his final campaign as a 49er. We know he's Shanahan's favorite. If you said what was the Niners' biggest game last year other than the Super Bowl and the playoffs, it was probably the Philly game. Who played huge in that Philly game? Deebo Samuel. He was the tone setter in that game. So I know Aiyuk has got the better body for the position long term. I know Aiyuk takes fewer hits. I know Aiyuk's a more complete receiver. I know it makes all the sense in the world to sign Aiyuk and say goodbye to Deebo at the end of the year. But what if Deebo has a monster year? What if Deebo comes in incredible shape and Aiyuk is worried about his contract and Aiyuk backslides a little bit and Deebo has a monster year and Cowing and Pearsall both start to contribute? The Niners may get to the end of the year and decide that, you know what? They'd rather go forward with Deebo than Aiyuk. We don't know. We can't predict the future. So I think the logical thing is that Aiyuk is the guy to go with over Deebo. But if Deebo is incredibly motivated and has a monster year and Pearsall and Cowing look good and the 49ers, Aiyuk backslides a little bit, the Niners will be thrilled that they didn't do a deal with him if they don't. Or if they do a deal with Aiyuk, they might regret it by the end of the year if he has some kind of muted production and Deebo is huge and Cowing and Pearsall look like young stars. And in that situation, you've got, Aiyuk signed up long-term. And, if Deebo has a big year, of course, he'll probably be easier to trade or you'll get more in trade for Deebo. But, Shanahan loves Deebo and Deebo is a tone setter. And what if Deebo happens to have a huge year and Aiyuk backslides a little bit and the other guys step up? I'm just saying it might be in the Niners' best interest to just let Aiyuk play it out on the 5th-year option. Give him the $14 million and let's see this thing play out and let Deebo and Aiyuk compete for, to see who stays. The guy who has the big year stays. The guy who has the not as big year leaves at the end of the year. So lots of different ways to play this, but this is the latest from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network. For Aiyuk and the 49ers, they had conversations recently. They are no closer to a deal, from my understanding, but they are also no closer to a trade request. That's never been something that Aiyuk has explored in this case. Besides, he's got to get back to work sometime before training camp to see if they can get something done. So that is the latest on Brandon Aiyuk, still unsigned. And it doesn't sound, at least from Garafolo's reporting, like we're working towards a quick resolution. Sounds like despite the meeting, despite the podcast, despite, getting on the same page, expressing whatever needed to be expressed, that these two sides are dug in and they're not on the same page and there is no deal to be had. So that is the latest in Brandon Aiyuk land. I hope it gets signed. I hope he's here long term. But the more this plays out and the more you watch Deebo, working like a madman in the offseason, maybe the best route is let these guys bring Aiyuk back on the 5th-year option and just let them compete. Just let them compete. It might create for a frosty locker room, but you know what? Competition is always a good thing. And, have the best man win. Whoever has the big year stays, and whoever has the not as big year goes at the end of the year. Maybe that's the best move for the 49ers. Maybe they know it. Maybe they realize that, hey, if they pay Aiyuk and Pearsall becomes a stud, then what happens? If they pay Aiyuk and Debo has a monster year, then what happens? But if you don't pay Aiyuk and you let him play it on the 5th-year option, in some ways you've got all the flexibility to do anything that you want to do based on how these receivers all play during the regular season. Just a thought. Give me your comments below. Hit like and subscribe, of course, to the Krug Show and support the channel. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.